Are you worried about today's dire financial situation?
Put simply, I would argue the Biden economic plan is working.
The storms on Wall Street continue today after regulators seized the assets of Silicon Valley Bank, marking the largest bank failure since the 2008 financial crisis.
Do you worry you'll have enough to pay your mortgage, pay your children's college tuition, enough to retire?
I believe our banking system remains strong.
Regional banks in focus once again today as the market digests the fallout of the First Republic failure.
You have questions, we have answers. It's the gold standard with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.
Oh, yes, it is. And we thank you for joining us. We are back together again. Ken Russo, Jennifer Horn, welcome to the Gold Standard Radio Show. Ken, how you doing this week? You're all peppy and ready to go.
Welcome to another day of government overreach.
Thank you. How's inflation looking?
Oh, it's subdued. It's on the way down. Bidenomics is working. Everything is rosy and dandy.
Biden's not freezing on stage.
The coast is clear.
The coast is clear.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, then
Yes.
we're going home. Thank you. No. I wish all of that were true. We really do. We wish the country was in a position to be successful and to protect all of us. Unfortunately, that is not the case.
Our monetary system, Jen, is built to fail. So
Yeah.
how exactly could it be the case? It's just a facade. It's like an illusion. So the illusion is really good, but we're here to talk about real stuff.
The reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also, talk about how to kind of protect ourselves a bit. Now, before we talk about today's episode, and I'm excited because, and I love a good Netflix documentary. I love like the mysteries.
This
I
sounds
love all
like
of that.
one, doesn't it?
Yes, you have me like drawn in when you said, hey, we're going to talk about Operation Sandman. I thought,
Yeah, it's not a Metallica song, but Operation Sandman, also known as Project Sandman.
Don't like anything called Operation or Project. Usually it means someone is up to no good, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. In the meantime, we always like to check in a bit with former President Richard Nixon, who had his finger on the pulse of how to destroy our dollar. Really, right? I mean,
Well, he
it
was
used
the
to be.
fall guy.
He was the fall. Okay, fine.
He's
He
the
was the
fall
fall
guy.
guy. You know what? I'm
Right.
not going to say that Richard Nixon was all bad, but this was kind of not a great move. So,
President Kennedy wasn't down with the idea.
yeah.
And then, kaboom,
he was down with it.
and then Tricky Dick came in. United States started running out of gold. Bretton Woods Agreement started falling apart in 1944. And we know the day where the gold dollar, because our money was backed by gold, it became the credit dollar.
Right.
And it went something like, I'm going to suspend the convertibility of the dollar into gold. Hey, what if Richard Nixon sounded like Metallica?
I would love to. Can we get...
Exit night, enter light, take my hand off to Never Land.
That's pretty good. Have you been practicing?
Well,
has
the
Richard
end part
Nixon
was a
been
little
practicing?
easier. The other parts were, sorry, folks. Sorry, America.
Pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
I like it. We should, maybe we've just come up with an idea for a great television show. They have The Masked Singer, they have American Idol, they have The Voice. Maybe we should have former presidents singing karaoke against each other. Can you
Could be
imagine?
interesting. Sure, why not?
I don't know if Biden could do the lyrics.
No.
No.
He wouldn't even be able to walk up onto the stage.
It'd be
do the
rough.
Lyrics.
It'd
Yeah.
be rough,
Right.
yeah. All right, well, let's jump
talk
into
about
it.
Operation Sandman.
Yeah, no, this is not a Netflix documentary, but this is real life, and it's pretty frightening. So explain to us what this is. Project Sandman.
Well, there's a theory circulating about an event. And it's an effort, a coordinated effort, think about it that way, to switch from the U.S. dollar to a new world currency in one night. It's also being referred to as the night of the switch, like the old switcheroo.
Okay, so where is this theory floating around?
Well, on the internet.
On the interweb.
Yeah, now we'll see how much validity, how much water it holds. But this is something, Jen, that you and I have been talking about for a long time.
We know this is the desire, right? We just don't know what the plan looks like to get there.
How it's actually going to unfold.
Right.
But the thesis is that the BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and then you have Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates, they're banding together. And the rumor is that they're going to have a new currency, and that currency is going to be called the BRICS basket or the BRIC. And this Operation Sandman would be the coordinated effort to dismantle the dollar in one night, basically, by a coordinated dumping or selling of U.S. treasuries or dollars. Now, you got to think about it. If all these countries that are banding together, and they said, well, listen, the sanctions that the United States did to Russia in 2022 by freezing their assets and kicking them off of the SWIFT banking system, that could happen to us. Mm-hmm. We just passed the 50-year anniversary of the petrodollar, where that just ended. Mm-hmm. Now, if these countries are doing more business in local currencies and they're settling oil trades in currencies outside of the dollar and then net settling it in gold and then converting that gold back to their own currencies that they could actually use, that means that the demand for the dollar and dollar-denominated assets is going to go way down.
I was going to say, that's a frightening thought. Would that collapse us?
Slowly it will.
Yeah.
And then it's that kind of slowly but surely thing where we're chipping away. Then all of a sudden there's a big event and an avalanche where then, what are we going to do now sort of moment. Mm-hmm. Now, there's like 30 more countries that want to join BRICS, so this is not something that should be taken lightly, Jen. And in all essence, I just think it's inevitably going to happen because the United States has, enjoyed the privilege of being the world reserve currency for so long. And we've talked many times about the stages of empire. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about, are we closer to maybe towards the end of that cycle versus the beginning? And I would have to say absolutely yes. So to answer your question, and remember when Putin talked to Tucker Carlson back, maybe like about 6 months ago?
Sure.
And he mentioned about how drastically Russia has lowered the dollar-denominated reserves that they've held versus what they used to hold. Dollar, euro way down, and currencies like Chinese yuan and the Russian ruble way up.
Well, we've seen that because they've joined forces with China because the United States has done everything that we can to isolate Russia, right, and weaponize our money and their money against them. So, of course, they're going to find someone else. That's China, and it leaves us out. Strategically, that has become problematic for the United States.
Yeah, and we mentioned, me and you, just within the last couple of weeks, that one of the biggest mistakes that we could see happen is allowing Russia and China to, get closer.
Which is what they've done with Iran.
Well, exactly right. And look at what's happening right now with the elections for the G7 countries. Mm-hmm. And the stock markets are reacting very negatively to what's going on over there. And we're seeing some chaos even politically, in countries in Europe. And remember, these countries, they're not producing really any natural resources. They need it from Russia. They need it from different places. They're dependent on Russia and those reserves and those natural resources. So this is a real bad situation. And why I scratch my head is we're not going to be able to fix it by just printing more money, okay, and borrowing more money. And that's our plan, okay? Now, we have political leaders that we like and that we may root for, right?
Mm-hmm, of course, we do.
And we will get respites or whatever. But when you talk about this big cycle, the Democrats and the Republicans, they're all responsible. Mm-hmm. George Bush took the debt, I believe, from 5 to 10 trillion.
In the name of war and protection, right?
Right. When the whole war on terror started, which was only supposed to cost like 70 billion, and it ended up costing like 13 trillion until, Biden did that wonderful ending in Afghanistan, which was fantastic. And then Obama took the debt from 10 trillion to 20 trillion. Mm-hmm. President Trump took the debt from 20 trillion to 28 trillion.
Thank you, COVID.
Yes, and more excuses to just print money, right?
Yep.
Real convenient that happened right at the end of his 4-year term too, right? And then we have debt now approaching $35 trillion. Think about that for a minute.
It's incredible.
5 trillion 20 years ago to 35 trillion today. Now interest rates are rising. What do you think is going to happen to the financial and the monetary system?
We're going to have to borrow just to pay the interest.
Yeah, which is over $1 trillion a year now, which is more than we spend on military.
You can't dig yourself out of a hole like that. I mean, if you personalize it, and this is what I always say, because sometimes when we talk about trillions, I mean, it's impossible to even know how many zeros to write on the page, right? But if you think about yourself, and when you get yourself into a situation and you have a lot of debt, at some point, the game is over. You have too much debt. You have to stop. You have to reevaluate. You're not going to continue to take out more loans or more credit cards. At some point, they're going to shut you down. And that's where the United States is, but on a much larger and scarier level.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like we're bankrupting ourselves, right, as a government. And quite frankly, whoever's listening to this should be worried and appalled. Every single American should say to themselves, well, if this all plays out, what's going to happen to the purchasing power of my money?
Right.
What's going to happen to the value of my dollar? How is the banking system going to survive? I mean, we've mentioned many times about how risky and leveraged the banking system is. So someone would have to say to themselves, well, how safe is my money at the bank? Then you have to think about the validity and the health of the market. Okay, think about the health of the bond market,
right,
which is the biggest market. And that was supposed to be the safest investment in the world, right, Jen? And I think we covered over the last 4 or 5 years, the bond, the 30-year bond, if you bought a 30-year bond when interest rates were really low, you're like down 45% on your investment. Now, that's realized if you have to sell it, obviously. If not, you're just getting a small payment and you're not keeping up with inflation, so you're getting buried with inflation anyway. So this is real bad, and I can't say to myself, well, who's going to come to the rescue? So is the Federal Reserve Bank going to come to the rescue and buy all of our bonds and buy all of these mortgage-backed securities with more fake money? And is the government going to just issue more bonds with more fake money? And is the Fed just going to give more digits to the regional banks and have them, I don't know.
More fake money. It's just more fake, right? We need something real. That's for sure.
Well, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
So what I would say is the lesson of today's first part of the show is think about the money you have.
Run and build a bunker.
Yes. Think about the money you have. And if you consider that as fake money, which I do, how could you possibly turn some of that into real money? And that's kind of what we're talking about, and that's kind of the topic. And it's not going to go away just because the stock market's doing okay or the housing market's up a little bit. It's not going to go away.
Let's focus on the real next.
Okay.
Jennifer Horn, that's me. That's Ken Russo.
Yes.
This is the Gold Standard Radio Show.
Dr. Gorka here. You're listening to The Gold Standard with your hosts, Ken Russo from veteran-owned Midas Gold Group and Jennifer Horn. Owning private money in the form of physical gold and silver is perhaps more important than ever to your long-term financial security. As U.S. banks fail, the Biden administration sends hundreds of billions abroad while depleting our strategic oil reserves. However, the biggest financial threat may be coming from within: central bank digital currency. The patents have been filed and the big banks have released plans for implementation. Midas Gold Group sees tyrannical implications: the end of cash, the end of financial privacy, big government able to see your every purchase. Could there be ties to social credit? Hear more commentary on the political and economic issues that affect your financial security right here on the Gold Standard. You can create your own Gold Standard with a call to Midas Gold Group, 855-322-GOLD. That's 855-322-4653, MidasGoldGroup.com.
Welcome back. It is the Gold Standard Radio Show. Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn. And it sounds like a Netflix documentary, guys, but it is not. But anytime you talk about an operation or a project, it gets a little creepy. And Ken, before the break, we were talking about Operation Sandman. For those people who are just joining us, just give the brief overview of what this is, because it could spell real trouble for our dollar, the system that we know, and really the American financial system as a whole.
Yeah, it's a theory, Jen, of a lot of these BRIC nations and their new members dumping dollars and dumping treasuries in one coordinated effort, actually referred to as the night of the switch, and obviously to weaken the strength and the dominance of the dollar as the world reserve currency. And we've been talking about this for a while, how the whole world is de-dollarizing. It seems like a lot of people are, joining the China team, let's just so to speak. You have BRICS, you have the Shanghai Cooperative Organization, you have the EEU, which is the Eurasian Economic Union, you have the Belt Road, you have the New Development Bank. I mean, what are these? These are all organizations where people are saying, well, let's be on China's team, let's be on Russia's team, let's do some stuff together. And
that's not where America wants to be.
Where are we? What team are we? I mean, it's like a party, right, Jen? And we're not invited. We're not participating.
I don't like those kind of parties. I only like parties that we are invited to. That's for sure. And this is, I think what we have to remember is that there is a shift going on. And for a long time, Americans have had this arrogance that we're just going to be able to get through it. We're going to be able to spend through it. We're going to be able to print money through it. Whatever it is, we think we're going to get through it. And look, I love the American tenacity and I love the American spirit. And I want to see this country survive, but we have to pay attention to the global climate. When you see financially that China is gaining more and more power, we have to follow the story here, right?
Yeah, and we will survive.
We will, of course.
And we will come out of this someday better. But for now, the trend is definitely headed in the wrong direction for sure.
There's going to be pain before you get recovery and relief, I would imagine.
And that advantage of the dollar being the world reserve currency has enabled the United States over the last at least 50 years especially to do so much. And if that advantage is slipping away, that's a real problem, because that advantage allowed us to have so much debt at almost a zero cost. And now that's changing, because now it's costing so much more to service our debt. Now, we all know that the world is headed digital.
Right.
Okay, and there's another project here that I wanted to talk about.
I wrote this one down. This is the Project M Bridge.
Yeah.
Another creepy project, I'm telling you.
Now we may want to spend a little bit more time on this next week as its own show, but Project M Bridge is a CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currency Initiative, for international trade. And Saudi Arabia just joined. Obviously, they're setting the stage, Jen, for more digital currency payments for oil trade with China. Now, this corresponds to the 50-year anniversary of the petrodollar status in 1974 with President Ford and Saudi Arabia. So there's a lot of questions about, is Saudi Arabia kind of turning their back on us?
A bit.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say absolutely. Now, Project M-Bridge was launched, Jen, in 2021 by the BIS, Bank of Thailand, Central Bank of the UAE, the Digital Currency Institute of China, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. There are 6 full participants, and there's 26 other official entries. So there's more countries that even want to band together, not only with BRICS for trade and all that stuff, but there are also many countries that want to band together for digital currencies as well.
So explain what that means for us here in the United States. Obviously, we have these countries coming together. I think many of us are wary about a digital currency, but what does it mean is that going to force America's hand to take place in this, or how does this affect us?
Well, what I could take from it, and obviously there's probably a lot more, more qualified people to explain it better than I could. But,
not in my Rolodex.
Well, if it's not settling in dollars, that means that it's going to settle in another type of currency or another type of payment. If it's not settled in dollars, then that means that the United States stands to benefit nothing at all from the transaction. Right, we lose. So that benefit is gone as long as these countries continue to do more and more business in their local currencies. If they continue to do trades and settle trades digitally outside of the dollar, they can do business privately where the United States doesn't have to know about it. Their own governments, I guess, will be following what's going on, but that's their business. We're talking about how is this going to affect the United States of America and our dollar. So from what I take of it is our leaders are busy taking $1 trillion in new debt out every 100 days. And we have these other countries that are worried about resources and population and gold and doing business together. In my opinion, you have one group that's headed in the right direction, and then you have another group like the G7, which is in chaos and absolutely headed in the wrong direction, financially, politically, socially, I mean, every way you can think about. And the end of an empire, socially, politically, and economically, starts to crumble. And look at what's going on now. I mean, with our country, with the political system, with the judicial system, you know, economically, socially.
Chaos.
Yeah, it's chaos. And over the next 6 months, that's probably going to ramp up significantly. So you have to ask yourself, if the chaos in our country, financially, politically, economically, is going to ramp up significantly, wouldn't it make a lot of sense to kind of say to yourself, well, maybe I should ramp up my protection when it comes to my money. Maybe I should safeguard what I've saved. Maybe I have an IRA that I don't want to see disappear. Maybe I have a 401k that I don't want to see get hammered. Maybe I have some stocks at the bank, or some checking or savings at the bank that just say, hey, listen, it's not doing anything there. It's getting killed by losing purchasing power. It's dwindling. The interest that they're giving me is not, making up for it. We all know that the FDIC insurance is not enough, where if a lot of these banks failed, together at the same time, there's nowhere enough insurance for me to be made whole. I could be left with pretty much next to nothing. What could I do?
Right. Because you don't want to just rest on the idea that the government is going to bail us out, because at some point the government is not going to bail us out. We're going to see a total redo of the system. Who knows what it'll look like.
They may bail us out, Jen, but the terms and conditions may not be to our advantage. They may say, okay, we're going to bail you out, but you're going to have to do this. You're going to have to participate in this digital system. We're going to bail you out, but we're going to nationalize all the IRAs. We're going to bail you out, but you're not allowed to move any of your money around from the banks. But whatever happens, in my opinion, be in control of your own destiny. Make those decisions now. Gold and silver provides sovereignty. Give yourself an opportunity to survive this financial situation that is quickly approaching, and it's going to be on top of us before you know it.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to carve out your own financial freedom away from the system. Take that personal responsibility and figure out a way to protect yourself, your well-being, your financial well-being, and your family's legacy. And you can do it with gold, precious metals.
That's an easy way to do it.
It's an easy way to do it. Now, if you have questions about anything that you hear on this program, we always have a hotline set up for you. So if you need to get some answers, you want some direction about this, you can always call 855-322-4653. Let us know what your thoughts are on the program. Ask the questions that have been hanging over you at 855-322-GOLD, 855-322-4653. We'll also tell you about MidasGoldGroup.com as well, so that you can get more information about gold and precious metals.
Yeah, you can go right on to MidasGoldGroup.com. There's a pop-up form. You can just put in your name, your phone number, and an email. We'll give you a call and talk a little bit about your situation, see if gold and silver is something that you may want to think about doing. And kind of hold your hand throughout that whole process.
When you think about that, too, when you think about, in our last moment here, the kind of the end stages of the empires you talked about, nobody wishes this on our country for sure, but you have to look at the signs. And there's going to be a rebirth, but you have to make sure that you can ride out that wave. And that's what's really great about owning gold and keeping something tangible at home with you, where you're not relying on a system, as you mentioned, Ken, that's pretty broken, and we now have people outside of the country who are trying to break it even more.
Yeah, look at what's happening. People are coming into this country every day. We don't know who they are. There's Russian warships 200 miles off the coast of Florida. Yeah. So it's a scary situation. There's a lot of stuff going on that's very important. I know people are nervous, and it feels like we're coming, close to something really important happening. And I would just encourage people to try and do something about their own unique situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can ask all of those questions at MidasGoldGroup.com, 855-322-GOLD. That's the number to call, 855-322-4653. And you can get lots of resources. And as you mentioned, fill out that form, ask your questions, MidasGoldGroup.com, MidasGoldGroup.com. Always
That does
there
it.
to help. Yeah.
That does it for Operation Sandman.
I hope that.
You know what? I think next week we should talk a little bit more about Operation Sandman and the night of the switch.
All right, the night of the switch. Oh boy. MidasGoldGroup.com. Thanks for joining us. It's the Gold Standard Radio Show with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.